this is Caleb, and welcome to Kent Farm. I'm here with the owner of Kent Farm, Ken Silvera. How are you doing today?
Just great. It's like we've got wonderful evening going on tonight. It's here at the Kent Farm table that we never actually used to eat anything on. We just did podcasts
in the loft,
in the
farm. Thanks for having me at the farm, Kent. You know, I guess when Clark went to Metropolis, he went from Kent Farm to Kent Apartment. You know, that's what he did.
And we really are close to the Kent Farm because John Schneider actually lived on a farm not too far from here.
That's true, yeah.
Pa Kent was right there in a great
Cornell, yeah, exactly.
Cornell. So
it makes sense. It makes sense.
We are here.
So anyways, today we are doing something special. We're going to talk about the top 10 Superman graphic novels. In honor of Superman Day is April 18th. Why? Because Warner Brothers says so. That's why. Dave declared, but really it's because it celebrates the 88th anniversary of Action Comics #1. So, Kent, we're going to start with an honorable mention. Okay. That would be fine, which I'm going to go with Superman Red Sun, written by Mark Millar, with art by Dave Johnson, published in 2003, collects 3 issues. This is kind of an Elseworlds tale, which is why I didn't think it would be great for the top 10, because it's not the typical story. But it's about, what if baby Kal-El landed in the Soviet Union instead of America? How would he be different? Well, he'd grow up with that government, with those values, and that's a dictatorship, and it would be different. And it's a really cool story. You have different versions of characters. You have your Batman, your Wonder Woman, your different stuff, and it's pretty well done.
And like Secret Identity, also based on a single issue from the Bronze Age.
Yeah. Oh, good point.
Had you read that, the Superman of 2001?
I haven't read what it's based on. No,
it's cool. There's a fun sequence where the U.S. and Russia are trying to both like get the downed spacecraft, and that's what spurred Miller to write this. Like obviously in the comic from '76. Like the U.S. comes up with it, and I was like, "What if the Russians came up with it?"
Yeah,
and that spurred all of Red Sun, and it's still a great story about what makes Superman Superman, and it's also a great Lex Luthor story.
Yeah, because he's more in the right of, we got to take down this powerful alien that has the ability to conquer us at any time.
He is still Luthor, and he's still Luthor being like, these aliens are like, we need mankind's ingenuity, and and I represent that better than any man on Earth. Yeah, and he's still got like all those great Machiavellian and megalomaniacal genius Luthor traits. But as you pointed out, we need them this time.
We need
need someone to bring Superman down and put him in his place, because this time around he's being raised in this totalitarian sort of mindset that says I should reign over everyone and keep them boxed up like ants. No, he's still Superman, but he has a different set of values.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and it's an interesting capitalism versus communism discussion. And you could tell like Snyder wanted to get there to something like that with where he was going with the nightmare sequences from the big Snyderverse Justice League. Yeah. And it's kind of too bad he didn't just, honestly, there are things I liked about Snyder's take of Superman. But it would have been better off if he had just adapted Red Sun instead of trying to say this is Superman. Because that seemed like obviously the imagery and the costumes and the vibe he was going for anyway.
Yeah, some people it's like their go-to is like, what if he was evil? Different personality. That's sort of the story they're drawn to. So anyways, Ken, that's the honorable mention.
Yeah.
So starting at number 10 proper, we have Kryptonite, Nevermore, written by Denny O'Neil with art by Kurt Swan, published in 1971, collects 8 issues. Now, I love Denny O'Neil. In 1971, Denny was writing Hard Traveling Heroes, Batman, and Superman, and doing great work.
Wow.
All 3 of those. And really redefining those characters in all 3 of those runs. And, in many ways, this is a soft relaunch, because it's like the first appearance of the Bronze Age Superman. This is Denny in the 70s kind of updating the character, We have
a TV reporter. It's a more realistic.
Yeah, he becomes a TV reporter.
Kind of gets rid of the goofy animal sidekicks. No Streaky the super cat.
Yeah, he's a little more depowered. He's a TV reporter. He works for Morgan Edge. And I was just reading your Superman meets Spider-Man, and that has this Bronze Age. He's a TV reporter in that. He has Morgan Edge as the boss, and so you see Denny's influence kind of, linger for a while. In this story, there's an alien spirit, Sand Superman, that comes down and drains Superman of his powers. So you get him being more vulnerable than the typical Silver Age Superman would be. And there's a very cool part where he goes to this hellscape dimension, which is very metal, and there's aliens that look like demons, and he gets to travel to that realm. And not all of the changes stuck, but it was still a pretty good direction to be taking the character in. So
it's interesting how much the lack of kryptonite, kryptonite being destroyed is the defining moment because it changed everything.
Right.
And then nothing much really changed after that.
Yeah. Because of course that can't be permanent. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything else changed, but the lack of kryptonite didn't become like this driving force after that. And most of the things became more where the battles, especially with the sand creature, is more moral. Right?
Yeah.
Ethics.
And part of what I like about that is it takes him out of Metropolis. He's in the desert. I like when he's in other parts of the country and he becomes a more national, these different locations.
There is a deep, like you said, he loses kryptonite, but we got to offset that, so we depower him a bit.
Yeah.
To get rid of him. And it's Superman, it sort of also looking at his own, humanity a bit.
Yeah.
Bringing him down to street level, because Denny O'Neil likes street level, so he's dealing with emotions and interactions with people, and I think you see a lot more realisticness in that. Not quite to the extent that we saw in Hard Traveling Heroes, where it's Superman dealing with drug addicts or racism and whatnot, but it's closer. It's he's getting closer to diverse characters in his sphere in Metropolis.
Yeah, he's ushering in that Bronze Age. All right, Ken, coming at number 9, this one I will give you credit for, is Superman's Secret Identity, written by Kurt Busiek with art by Stuart Emonin, published in 2004, collects 4 issues. Now, as you may know, Clark lives on Earth Prime, where Superman is a fictional comic book character. And this was also, I think, based on a one-shot
DC Comics presents Superman and Superboy, and it's the Superboy of Earth Prime. And it was totally weird. It came out, Marv Wolfman told me about it, he didn't intend on this character to be in there, but it's hey, we're doing, we're getting rid of Earth Prime, and we just created this kid on Earth Prime, as a one-off, we got to do something with him. We can't just get rid of him. So Marv had to incorporate him into the 4 heroes who are left over at the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths, when he later becomes Psycho, Superboy, Prime, and Infinite Crisis. And it's so sad because he was originally he was just such a lovable character. He represented all of us. He represented every kid growing up reading comic books who wanted to be Superman here on this planet. Yeah. And then he actually got to become Superman.
Yeah.
And what Secret Identity is Kurt Busiek taking that notion and instead of destroying Earth Prime, giving him a more grounded, realistic, and actually making a real person.
Yeah.
Born on Earth. With Superman as a comic book, be a person.
Yeah.
And
they explain later it was an asteroid passing Earth that affected him and gave him Superman similar powers. Yeah.
That are the comments saying the DC Comics presents story. But the actual life that he gets to live and the Lois Lane he gets to meet and their courtship and how they have kids and protecting them from government trying to hunt him down. It's so...
Yeah, it's earnest, it's beautiful.
It's so real.
Yeah.
Of any Superman story I've ever read, it's the one that made me feel like these are real people.
Yeah. His relationship with Lois is my favorite aspect of it, because he moves to New York, he meets this woman who's named Lois Lane, so they get the teasing of Clark and Lois. But they really develop a really sweet relationship and marriage, and they have 2 daughters. So it bypasses he is human, he can reproduce. So you get that
and he
story,
ages, right?
And he ages,
and he slowly gets like, it's just beautiful.
The government's constantly investigating him, like you mentioned. He has twin daughters, Carol and Jane, and the daughters develop superpowers. So you get that. And at age 57, Clark, his powers begin to fade. So that's the way he kind of Busiek diverts from maybe the constrictions of the classic Superman story. Really works well for this book. So
yeah, it's beautiful, and it's one of those rare sort of Superman books. I even like how the logo is like a throwback to like a realistic newsprint, but then Clark himself is the one element.
Yeah,
it's one of the rare comics that you kind of have to go you have to experience it. Like it's meant to be experienced as a comic book.
Yeah,
kind of like Watchmen. Like there's something just about the way the panels and the pages, like represent reality better than reality.
So, okay. Moving on to number 8, Kent, is Superman for All Seasons, written by Jeff Loeb with art by Tim Sale. Published in 1998.
Awesome.
Collects 4 issues. Yes, I got Tim Sale to sign it at a Comic-Con. But, the title comes from the Robert Bolt play A Man for All Seasons. So it's a play on that title. And this book it's a low-stakes trip down memory lane. The art is beautiful. It's very Norman Rockwell Americana. It's 4 issues that reflect 4 seasons. So spring is teenage Clark Kent in Smallville, so you get that imagery, which I love. And he's early on in his career, so summer is Superman's arrival in Metropolis, and you get those, introductions, him meeting Lois and the people. Fall is Lex Luthor's plan to poison Metropolis, but he has an antidote, so that's sort of the twist on it. So Clark fails. He gets outsmarted by Lex, basically. So winter is Clark returning to Smallville to reconnect with his roots. So that's sort of the structure of it, those 4 issues. And it's just really well done. The writing is great. Jeff Loeb wrote on Smallville. He wrote the famous Red K episode and a bunch of good episodes. So that tie-in was really meaningful for me.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this is a great representation of Smallville and the Kents. Like it's just I love how you put that. It's low stakes. Thank you. Like it is. Yeah. It's just Superman and his parents and his what happens with the Luthor escalation. I like how it jumps off from Man of Steel, like the revamp, the Byrne revamp with Luthor arrested, and it's
it breathes. I love Lana's role in this, and their friendship is sweet, and Pete Ross is in it, and so it's kind of the importance of connecting with your roots and going back there. And
we're not trying to remake them in the 2000s to be super edgy.
Yeah,
it's the opposite of there's no this is just a nice simple
it's the heart of the character.
The heart of the character, and it still beats and it still works even when told with a semi-modern modern style, and it's great. Yeah. There are a lot of Superman stories that tear him down.
Yeah,
this is one that just gives you what makes him lovable and great.
Yeah, and I'm starting to see a theme here of what if we took something from the 50s, a Silver Age thing, but took it more seriously. So this takes that Norman Rockwell Americana thing from the 50s, but takes it more seriously, more sophisticated. And that's what we get with Superman for All Seasons. So, coming at number 7, Kent, we have Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, written by Alan Moore, with art by Kurt Swan, published in 1986. Collects 2 issues, Superman 423 and Action Comics 583. This is a very significant book, Ken, because, Crisis on Infinite Earths ended the Silver Age continuity and rebooted the DC universe. So, this allowed Alan Moore to write the final Silver Age Superman story.
I'm going to say, even at the time, they called it an imaginary tale.
They did, yes.
They didn't quite say this was the official.
Yes,
because
you are technically right.
Remember what I said about...
They do kill off a lot of characters.
We wanted to remind you what made that wholesome Silver Age Superman so wonderful. Alan Moore basically comes along and says, no, they're all bloodthirsty maniacs. Let's annihilate, like brutally kill all these characters we've loved for dozens of years.
Yes, but but what's unique about is like it does give you a final Superman story, which you don't see very often.
No.
You know, this was like one of the first ones to do it. And I would argue is like the granddaddy of final Superman stories. Because if you think about Superman's lifespan, how long does he live? You know, thousands of years, hundreds of years? How do you end a Superman story? For a guy raised human, it would seem fitting that at the end of the day, he would want to give up his powers and live as a human and live with a wife and kids. And that's what he does. Well, they expand it, right? Because I think Mixelplick has like affected the brains of these villains that make him more ruthless. So Superman has to sort of take him off the map. And so the threat isn't there anymore with some of these villains taken care of. And I love the device of, it's months later, Lois is given the report of what happened in the final days of Superman. And then she's living with this guy, and you reveal, you know, who's the guy, and it's really Clark. And I think it's very moving still. I think it's very heartfelt.
Yeah, it's not just brutally violent to be brutally violent. There are other imaginary stories that it sort of apes on. Story of Superman Red, Superman Blue, the death of Superman, where
like Gold Kryptonite.
Yeah. And these stories weren't afraid to kill characters.
You're focusing on the wrong part,
yeah.
Ken. You need to focus on Clark's happy ending. Okay, this is even when Smallville was revisited years later through the Crisis TV show. That's what they did. He gave up his powers. He was raising a family. Like, that's a fitting end for Superman, you know? And I think that part he nailed. Okay, at number 6, Kent, we have Superman Smashes the Klan, written by Gene Luen Yang with art by Guri Hiru, published in 2020, collects 3 issues. Now, this book was inspired by a 1946 episode of the Superman radio show called Clan of the Fiery Cross.
It's an accident, I guess.
You guess?
Well, I guess I was kind of crowding the plate in batting practice. I was pretty sore at this kid, Tommy Lee. He beat me out for number 1 pitcher on the
Wait
team.
a minute. What's the kid's name?
Lee. Tommy Lee. He's a pretty good pitcher.
Did this Lee kid just move into the neighborhood about a month ago?
That's right. You know him?
Well, if he's the one I think he is, his father just got appointed to the health department as a bacteriologist.
I don't know what that is. The new mayor just did appoint him to the health department.
Oh.
I heard Tommy telling Jim Olsen and Muggs about it.
Yeah, he's the one then.
And in that episode, a Chinese-American family moves to Metropolis. This takes place in the 40s, so think of like Max Fleischer Superman, that era. And they are harassed by, they don't call it the KKK, but they call it the Clan of the Fiery Cross. When this radio show came out in the 40s, the Klan had a resurgence in the 20s and 30s, so they are addressing current events, real issues, on a show that kids are listening to. So it's a balancing act. So the book, inspired by that, written by a Chinese American, you know, in many ways, Superman is not the main character of the story. This family is. But what the book does well is, because it's early in Superman's career, it also introduces his origin, and I think a really cool way of the crystal that's always calling to him is making him see visions of his parents. So he's learning about who Jor-El is, what Krypton is, his identity throughout the story. It's kind of intercut with that. And then as a reporter, Clark and Lois are on the case of this Klan activity that's going on and burning crosses and harassing people. And that Superman intervenes. So
that is a deep cut that he found like a single episode of an
Yeah.
1946 radio serial and said, hey, this would make a great comic book. And I relate to it because my family came here and moved to a big city. And,
Yeah.
I researched all the history of how this attack happened. And, I was reading the essay in the back, and it's, Birth of a Nation basically reignited this whole thing. Like, it's very sad. It's very sad that a movie had that much effect on American culture. Like, pop culture, like, just, it's like people didn't understand that.
I think Woodrow Wilson screened it in the White House. And it's very unique that it's what it's based on, that it's telling that story. It's for a younger audience. Yet you're doing this balancing act with real historical stuff. Yeah.
And once again, I like the lightheartedness of the art. Like you said, it's more like for young adults. It's got like that anime sort of influence on it. It's as well as the Fleischer Brothers look, but it's he's arguably much nicer than the actual 40s Superman. Like the 40s Superman would have been a little more rough when dealing with some of these things.
Exactly. All right, time for the top 5 now. We are getting into the top 5, Kent. Coming in at number 5, we have The Man of Steel, written and drawn by John Byrne, published in 1986, collects 6 issues. Well, we know that Alan Moore ended Silver Age Superman. Man of Steel is the definitive post-crisis reboot of the character.
Yes.
So without John Byrne, you don't get the next 50 years of Superman. He made some key changes and has modernized it. When you think of the key changes, you think of Christopher Reeve, where Clark is very much the disguise. He's bumbling. Superman is the real guy. Byrne, though, Superman's the disguise. Clark is who he is.
And he kind of makes a big point about the fact that he was an embryonic state in the spaceship, but was actually born.
He was actually, in the Silver Age, Clark had a past as Superboy, but there's no Superboy here. A lot of his
I'm not sure
powers developed in the team.
That like they went to great pains later on to try to figure out how to do Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. I'm not gonna. It's like a big fight, and there's like,
Look, not all of the changes,
and I do. I feel like that just came out of the movie, really. Or he didn't become Superman while he was a boy. So,
but you know what else it did? Jonathan Kent's alive.
Yes.
In this book.
Yes.
The Kents live.
And that is one change that has actually semi-persisted.
And you know what? Clark plays football without killing people. Of that as well.
Yeah, but I was saying we wouldn't have had Lois and Clark with the Kents alive. We wouldn't have had the Justice League Unlimited episode where Martian Manhunter is nowhere to be, so we got to take him down to the Kents for Christmas to have exactly. They are like mom and dad to everyone, and we wouldn't have that without this series, and it's a great change.
It is indeed. And they made, Clark's the only survivor of Krypton. That was one of the changes. Now, that definitely gets changed later on.
And again, they go through great pains to kind of come up with Supergirl, as we'll find out in the next one.
Why is she a shape-shifting alien, Matrix Supergirl? Well, because they didn't want other Kryptonians.
They held to their guns for a good 15 years. That was impressive, Maybe 20.
But I think it's a great read. I think it's fresh, it's modern, it's exciting.
Love the new take on Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
Right? It's a great. It is an amazing relaunch by and large.
Yeah.
He had a huge job to do. He had to redefine Superman for the modern era. Like you said, Daniel O'Neill kind of gave him a soft reboot, but it's we've got to do something to modernize him and get rid of all this silly super pets. They kind of did that with Batman already. There's no Ace the Bat Hound. There's no Batgirl.
It's funny. It's kind of like what follows the Bronze Age is post-crisis.
Yeah. Yes.
That's basically
post-crisis is basically
that's the new age. Now I have to ask though before we do that, do you remember being in 1986 and you're reading Whatever Happened, Crisis, Man of Steel, and it's things are moving. these are some big changes happening that had not happened before.
Huge.
You know?
They were always like up until then, like Superman was just such a cash cow. They're like very timid to make any major changes. Oh, he's a news reporter instead of on TV
right,
instead of on the Daily Planet. Wow, I guess. But I mean, Byrne did some things later on in the run that the team would have to go to great lengths to kind of like undo.
Sure.
And after that undo is when we got the Triangle era Superman.
Oh yeah,
which culminated in Death and Return.
Yeah, which brings us to number 4.
Yep.
In my long intro, number 4 we have Reign of the Supermen. Published in 1993. Now, for those who don't know, The Death and Return of Superman is a 40-issue story divided into 3 parts. The Death of Superman is 7 issues, World Without a Superman is 11 issues, and Reign of the Supermen is 22 issues. It is primarily written by Dan Jurgens on Superman, Roger Stern on Action Comics, Jerry Ordway and Carl Kessel on Adventures of Superman, and Louise Simonson on The Man of Steel. Imagine reading 4 Superman titles in a month, Ken. Imagine that's so much reading. 4 titles.
It's the whole reason I had a part-time job in college. just so I could get these books.
Now, we know what happens in Death, and we know what happens in Funeral. 3 months after Funeral for a Friend, Reign of the Supermen kicks off with Adventures of Superman 500, which the soul of Jonathan Kent has to go to the great beyond and find the soul of Clark and bring him back from what he thinks is like Kryptonian heaven, but it's not.
That is
bring
so
him
metal.
back in. It's so metal. And that brings him back into his body. We also get introduced to some new characters in Reign. We have Steel, who's John Henry Irons.
Yep.
And he's like Iron Man, but cool with a hammer. Still, we have Superboy, who's a clone of Superman. The Eradicator. And he's very cool because he's like an ancient AI Kryptonian technology that's trying to preserve the history of Krypton. So when Superman dies, he gets activated in the fortress, builds a body for himself, and he's the one who steals Clark's body and brings it back to the fortress and puts it in the rejuvenation matrix and gets that going on. And then we have Cyborg Superman, very Terminator inspired, who's really Hank Henshaw. And
from that weird like Fantastic Four gone really wrong like twist story that Jurgens did, then you wonder whether he set this up with that. But
you needed one of the 4 to be evil. He teams up with Mongol later on, and that's kind of the twist there.
What is stunning about Reign of the Superman is everyone was like, which one of these 4 is it? Like we didn't know. Like the entire country thought they killed him, thought they canceled all these comic books, then brought him. So when you said like things are moving with Man of Steel, like like these are changes that are really going to stick. Yeah. Same thing with this. Did they really kill him? Right. Yeah. Are they really thinking about replacing him with one of these 4? What are they going to absolutely like change up the character? And the point, like you kind of like each one of these characters and these storylines and interactions are wildly entertaining because you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know which one of them is. They're all kind of cool characters in their own right. None of them are Superman though, and that was one of the points they were trying to make. If we actually lost him, could we live without Superman? Could one of these newer, hipper, modern... Because
they all have parts of it, like Steel has like the morality.
Yeah.
But Eradicator has like the Kryptonian knowledge side of him. But Superboy he's the most human.
He's the cool.
Yeah, cool.
Kid,
Yeah.
And the answer was wow, we're glad, like Superman's kind of a one and only, but like these other characters do in some ways like represent him, and they all of them except for Cyborg Superman got their own like comic book afterwards, and their own, and to a certain, and they all kind of still exist to this day.
Yeah, very cool character. And I love, when he finally comes back and he's in the black suits and his powers aren't full yet. He has the long hair, which inspired your haircut. Long-haired Superman. And but what we also get in this run, something very special. Superman number 78 features a letter written by Ken Silvera in the back of it. How did that happen? Wow. You're part of this run.
I am.
You wrote a letter to the editor.
And it was all about what they were doing with Lex Luthor and how they, dozens of issues also, leading up to this, where he was infected by his kryptonite ring and he died, and then his nephew.
Oh, because he's really Luthor too, right? From a different dimension, yeah.
And I was like, wow,
and he has the red hair.
The most exciting thing, maybe one of the most coolest things about this, and the Bronze Age Luthor had a lot of he loved Edison and what a science, and he had a heart for it. And there was this planet with a wife and kids, and there's always this aspect of Luthor that without Superman, maybe he'd actually do something good for the world and whatnot.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And they were sort of leading up to that sense of now Superman's dead. Maybe we've got a Luthor who's honestly, trying to find a way to redeem the
who isn't technically the old Luthor, so maybe he could be different.
Yeah,
and do some good.
And I think it's funny. I can see the hope in my letter that I was pulling to now that Superman's gone, maybe we'll get a redeemed Luthor. One of the reasons I love Harvey Dent and Two-Face is he's flipping, Batman's always trying to redeem him, and it's interesting that theme kind of runs through things.
Yeah. And at the time, you had theories about how they would actually bring back
so close
Superman, right?
I think that's why they printed my letter. It's so dang close to what actually happened.
What was the theory?
The theory was, and I was trying to tie this back to John Byrne's World of Krypton, but everyone is kind of born with in Krypton. There were how I said he's a regeneration matrix, and he's sent over. They're all clones. There aren't real people these. And so they make 3 clones, and it's why the Clone Wars happened, and that's which made more sense, was they were fighting over clone rights because they kept the other 2 embryos for spare parts in case you needed them.
Yeah.
So my idea was one of those 2 3s were actually grown, so that that would be the new body that would host the soul.
That the soul would just have to come to the new one. Yeah, I like that.
I'm pretty close.
Yeah. Man. The 90s were clone heavy. There's so many clones. Because the Guardian shows up, has a big role in this. The Newsboy Legion.
And you'd think, after the Spider-Clone saga that everyone hated in Spider-Man, why would they do that? But, it's...
But, it's a way of bringing back some of those classic characters and stuff. Well, I just want the audience to know that I read all 40 issues just for this podcast leading up to it.
It's not on your list, but I just kind of want to mention the fact that run was also Clark was already engaged to Lois, and then they actually got married, and right after this is when he did the big reveal. So that was also something that was decades in the making. That this run sort of was a part of. And eventually, we got the New 52, and we undid all of that again, right?
Yeah.
We got this brand new Superman, and then out of nowhere, Jurgens said, "Can I have a little pocket universe where our Superman that married Lois still exists with a kid?" Mm-hmm. And that 6-issue run was so popular, they basically undid the New 52 Superman and brought this Superman back in rebirth.
Oh wow!
So Jurgens this. It was
cool.
Jurgens. Not only did Jurgens really give us the definitive version of post-crisis Superman. Yeah, that was started with Byrne, but I like to think he gave us the version that we're all familiar with. Ultimately, molded it. But Jurgens was pretty much the point person for a lot of this, and the fact that he just came along and DC undid all of this in New 52, and then Jurgens once again came out of nowhere with this little Lois and Clark miniseries, and he basically undid the entire DC universe again.
He's that good.
He's that good, and that actually gave us the Lois and Clark TV show that just recently wrapped as well. Like it
right, yeah,
it helped
yeah.
redefine
Lois, yeah.
Yeah, so
that's a good point. I feel bad for your bank account in 1993.
Yeah,
It's a lot to keep up.
It was. They're all good.
Yeah,
the whole era, the Triangle era, is just so much fun.
Yeah, for sure. Well, at number 3, I don't have a physical copy of this book, but at number 3 we have Superman Aliens, written and drawn by Dan Jurgens. Published in 1995, collects 3 issues. You know, there are some things that are way better than they have any right to be. Including this book.
Yep.
Which is one of the all-time great crossovers. Dark Horse started publishing Alien comics in 1988, and this is the first big crossover. Superman is the first time xenomorphs have crossed over with a comic book character.
And most of the Dark Horse alien stuff were more terrifying than some of the later films. I mean, really good.
Yeah.
And this is arguably like one of the rare freaking... I just think, oh, well, that's like, no, they're not going to kill Superman. There's no real danger here. There's no real sense of horror or urgency. And there was... I was on the edge of my seat turning pages.
It's Absolutely. So cool. Because on the surface, it's like Punisher meets Archie. How are you going to mend these two? But they meet in the middle in a really good way, you know?
Yeah, you take Superman's powers away. You don't bring the yellow sun. It's
such a cool device. Yeah, Superman is investigating this outpost that was attacked by something. So the further and further he gets into space, further from the sun, the weaker he gets, which is really cool.
And he's still got a code against the killing.
Yeah.
any intelligent life, and the aliens are intelligent. Like so.
Yeah, right. And what is he investigating? Well, he gets a transmission from Argo City. We know what that means. So then you can include Kara as a character.
Yeah. And
not in like the Supergirl outfit, but that's really cool. That's like your Ripley. That, brings in your cool female character. And she was such a surprise in it.
But this story has the most metal Superman moment of any Superman story.
Yeah, the face hugger on him.
Impregnating him. And then him trying to get back into a yellow sun, range of a yellow sun before he gets his chest bursted.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Having to pull it out,
and then as he feels mouth. his superpowers returning, it means his internal organs somehow have superpowers, and he's forcing it up through his throat. And spoiler alert, up through his throat and out his mouth instead of his chest.
Yeah.
Oh, it is just the most harrowing moment ever in a Superman story. It's so.
For my money, it's the most metal Superman story ever.
Oh my gosh. And I just went, you couldn't tell that story any other way except Superman versus aliens.
Yeah.
It's such...
And at the same time, you even have, you have Lois stuff where she's on a LexCorp satellite investigating, and she's running from chest bursters as well, and she's just a human. So you have that going on. And, it's well done. It's a lot of fun. It's very different. At number 2, we have Superman Birthright, written by Mark Waid, with art by Leniel Francis Yu, published in 2004, collects 12 issues. Now, Ken, I have a confession to make, and that is I'm biased towards this book.
Yes.
I can't be completely objective, because this is the book that made me fall in love with comics, I always say that Jim Lee's X-Men is what got me into comics, but this is what made me fall in love with comics. And 2004, Smallville was on. It came out at a good time. So, similar to Byrne doing Man of Steel, this is the next definitive reboot of the character that Mark Waid did. This is Superman for Millennials. Mm-hmm. It's the best reboot since Man of Steel. It has, when you think of early 2000s sci-fi like Firefly and what Joss Whedon was doing, J.J. Abrams was doing, it has that aesthetic to it, that energy to it. Has a lot of Smallville stuff, which I love. It incorporates the Smallville idea that Lex and Clark knew each other when they were teenagers. My one pet peeve is that I don't like them being in the same high school class to get they shouldn't be that close in age. I'd like a Lex that's a little older, but I do like the idea that they knew each other as teenagers. I think is a cool idea.
Well, and that's the original way it was too. Like
In the Silver Age, yeah. But I do like the Smallville age gap, where there's, Clark is 16, Lex is 21 or something. Anyways, I digress. This is a really good job retelling the origin. Superman, Clark has that pilgrimage he kind of takes after high school. There's
so one thing I really
down.
thought was original and new, like the thing that Wade added to the legend that was brand new was that.
Yeah, like him going to Africa and going to these different countries, really being global, really expanding his horizons that way. In doing that, you're tackling like terrorism and warlords and gun violence and all this intense stuff.
Yeah, and it's nice that this time around his education didn't come from sitting in a fortress listening to his parents from Krypton and tell him everything. His education, his in between years, came from actually learning about Earth on his own.
Yeah, because what does he do for 12 years between 18 and 30? You want him doing stuff, Famously, Mark Waid has some bitterness towards Jeff Johns because this was supposed to be the definitive reboot of the character. And then DC said, actually, we're calling it Elseworlds, and Jeff Johns' secret origin will be the definitive.
Yeah, that's what you get for
origin
being
of the
the
character.
president of the company. It's your version that gets to be labeled as definitive. And I'm going to say, test of time. Right now, I think more people are looking at Birthright than Secret Origin as
I think so, yeah. But Ken, at number one, and the number one greatest Superman graphic novel of all time is All-Star Superman, written by Grant Morrison with art by Frank Quietly, published in 2008. It collects 12 issues. Similar to the aforementioned Whatever Happened, this is the final Superman story.
So you get to DC 1 million.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting part, is I love that fact. So instead of it ending with Superman giving up his powers to gold kryptonites, he has to fly into the sun to stop the sun from exploding. In DC 1 million, also written by Grant Morrison, that Superman lives in the sun for 1,000 years and then returns as Superman Gold, which is a very messianic allegory for a character that's already very messianic in many ways. So we like to say Grant Morrison 10 years earlier wrote a sequel to this story.
Wrote a prequel to DC 1 million.
Yeah. Exactly.
Absolutely the greatest love letter to the Silver Age, while also updating it for the modern age.
Yeah.
And in every way, each one of these stories is an archetypal story about these major events in Superman's life and characters.
Yes.
Be it Bizarro, Luthor. Jonathan Kent doesn't need it, but at least it's a touching...
There's a flashback scene, right, to him with the Kents.
It's
basically, Superman's dying from solar radiation, and he has 1 year to live.
Yeah.
So his powers are in overdrive. And so what is he going to do with this time left? Well, he tells Lois's secret. He gives her powers temporarily. They encounter, he does like the 12 labors of Superman, encountering Samson and Atlas. Lex Luthor breaks out of prison by taking a Superman pill. and getting the powers,
I love
which is
how
cool.
Clark is secretly helping him out along the way.
Yeah. I was helping them in prison because Parasite, there's a great sequence of Parasite attacking them in the prison. There's a great Bizarro sequence, is so cool. He goes to the Cube Bizarro world in there. There's some cool stuff with Jimmy Olsen in there.
It is the best Jimmy Olsen story ever.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that story.
The rainbow coat and stuff.
I mean, just the way he ends up, it's Turtle Boy Olsen, and it's a war between Superman and Jimmy Olsen, but then he's like saving him and trying to protect him. It's just such a great Jimmy story, and it's such a bummer that All-Star Superman animated, like the movie, didn't get a two-part. It didn't make the cut. I was like,
I know. I'm bummed they left out the Bizarro stuff too.
Yeah, but the number one sequence, like everyone will talk about. It's the moment when he just sits with the girl who wants to throw herself off the building.
Oh, yes, that moment. Yeah, that's a very famous moment. Yeah, not pressuring her, not just grabbing her, but just talking with her, yeah. It's amazing that he incorporates so many sci-fi fantasy elements, but keeps it so grounded in the emotion of the character that you never lose sight of that. Like, he's running out of time.
You kind of get the feeling like you're watching a 1950s sci-fi movie with the costumes sometimes. Like, it's...
Yeah. Any final Superman story has to be Elseworlds.
It has to be. The ultimate Superman story has to be about his death. Well, Jurgens made a story about his death that was in continuity.
Exactly. Brought him back. So, Ken, we turn it over to you, sir. What am I missing here? What else deserves to be on the top 10 list?
Man and Superman.
Tell me about that. What is it?
It is written a few years ago, and Marv himself called it the best Superman story I have ever or will ever write.
Really? Okay.
And it's, to go back and look at it, but it's one of those things where you kind of it does grab the essence of the character, and kind of like lays it out into what it means to be Clark Kent or to be Superman.
He gets credit in that Superman Spider-Man book I was just reading.
Yeah, which is also pretty awesome. And so I want to give him a shout out because he loves that story so much, and I think that's a great Superman story.
Nice.
And he's a legendary writer. Like, I know it's all Teen Titans and Crisis on Infinite Earths, and like, what else do you need to be like the best comic writer of all time? But,
I wanted to give a quick shout out to the Jeff Johns and Richard Donner Superman Last Son.
Last Son.
That was my other honorable mention, but I kept it just to one. That's a very fun story as well.
I think that's a fun story. I feel like Brainiac's, like, if you were asking, like, what's the best Jeff Johns Superman story, I'd say the Brainiac.
His Brainiac one, yeah. That's a pretty famous one as well.
It's also a good reinvention of Brainiac. We keep trying to reinvent him, and I think that one's closest to, like, what I'd like to see the character as.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's
We, of course, mentioned Kryptonite Nevermore. Also want to give a shout out to Superman vs. Muhammad Ali. Very fun that Denny O'Neil did.
Yeah, even more improbable than Superman vs. Aliens.
Yeah, exactly. Some real depowering going on there.
And gorgeous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, something nobody expected out of that book. A good story.
A good story, yeah. Cool.
Superman versus Shazam was also really good. We waited decades for that fight and liked the Superman fight. Rich Buckler, like, it's just knockdown, slobber knocker, wham, 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 big giant tabloid pages. Not not the best Superman story ever, but you just wanted to see that fight, and it delivered.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ken, for joining me. Can't thank you enough.
You're welcome.
This was a fun trip. Happy Superman Day to those who celebrate. And until next time, this is Caleb and Kent signing off. Goodbye, everybody.
That's saying, look to the skies.
Look to the skies.